There comes a moment in every artist's life when the noise around them grows louder than their own voice. For Courtney, that moment arrived with a strange, heavy quietness that spread across her world long after the final cheers of America's Got Talent had faded. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from rest or retreat. It was the kind that fills the air when millions of people are waiting for an answer, but the person they're waiting on isn't ready to speak. For a teenager who had once lit up the stage with a storm of soul and electricity, her sudden disappearance left a hollow uncertainty behind. Fans searched her name. They scrolled through her pages. They whispered about why she had vanished. And while the world wondered what had gone wrong, Courtney was living a story no one fully understood. A story shaped by fear, pressure, and the quiet need to breathe again. But the truth behind her disappearance didn't begin with the moment she went silent. It began years earlier, in a classroom where a little girl barely spoke at all, and it leads to an answer far more delicate than the world ever expected. Before the world knew her as a powerhouse vocalist who seemed to transform the moment music touched her skin, Courtney was the kind of child who almost dissolved into the background. Teachers worried about her quietness. She rarely raised her hand, rarely volunteered to speak, rarely allowed anyone to look too deeply into her world. Silence was her shelter. It kept her safe from the overwhelming noise of attention she never wanted. She wasn't empty, just hidden, carrying a voice she didn't yet understand. Everything changed when her school held a small talent show. Students filed onto a flimsy wooden stage, performing song after song with shy smiles or shaky nerves. No one expected Courtney to participate. She had barely spoken a full sentence aloud. But when she stepped forward, the room shifted. Her fingers tightened around the microphone, the air stilled, and the voice that erupted, coarse, powerful, trembling with soul, stunned the audience into total silence. That moment revealed something extraordinary, yet no one imagined that this quiet girl was about to be thrust into a spotlight bright enough to blind even the strongest adults. And the whirlwind waiting for her was far more intense than anyone could have prepared her for. When Courtney walked out onto the America's Got Talent stage, shoulders hunched and voice barely above a whisper, no one knew the force that was about to ignite. She gripped the microphone like it was the only thing grounding her. And when the music began, she shed her shyness in a burst of raw, electrifying energy. The performance raced across the internet within hours. Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer. Confetti rained down, the audience roared, and Courtney became a global sensation overnight. People compared her to Janis Joplin, a legendary name whose weight was impossible for a teenager to carry without consequence. Fans demanded more. Headlines followed her everywhere. And with every interview, every appearance, every comment, the pressure climbed higher and higher. She was no longer the quiet girl from County Durham. She was a symbol, a phenomenon, an expectation wrapped in skin. But the public didn't see the cost this sudden success placed on her shoulders. And as the applause grew louder, Courtney began to feel something fragile inside her start to crack. Courtney was still a child, tender-hearted, deeply shy, easily overwhelmed. Fame didn't arrive softly. It crashed over her like a wave she couldn't outrun. Everywhere she went, people recognized her. They wanted photos, conversations, performances, answers. She didn't know how to give any of those without feeling exposed. Social media amplified everything. Kind words lifted her for a moment, but the harsher ones lingered longer, settling into the corners of her mind. Millions of people judged her voice, her personality, her outfits, her movements. She didn't lash out, she didn't argue, she simply absorbed it quietly, letting the weight sink deeper until it felt impossible to carry without breaking. School became complicated, interviews brought stress, expectations felt heavier than her own body. And while the world celebrated her as the next superstar, Courtney was quietly struggling to breathe under the growing demands of a fame she never asked to control. Still, she kept performing. She kept pushing through the noise. Until the industry stepped forward with promises that would change her life in ways she never anticipated. After AGT, Courtney signed with Psycho Music, the label connected to Simon Cowell. For many, this seemed like the perfect move, a guaranteed path to stardom. Fans imagined albums, tours, high-budget videos, endless momentum. But behind the curtain, the process unfolded far more slowly. Her releases were limited, her public appearances diminished. Her highly anticipated debut album never appeared on the timeline fans expected. And in the absence of information, speculation grew. Some believed the label didn't know how to shape her unique sound. Others thought Courtney herself was resisting being molded into something she wasn't. Nothing was confirmed, but the silence itself became fuel for countless theories. The world waited for her next move, but Courtney wasn't ready, emotionally, creatively, or mentally, to become the star people assumed she should be. And soon, the silence surrounding her career would deepen into something no one could ignore. One day, without warning, Courtney simply faded from public view. Her social media went still, interviews stopped, music updates vanished. Fans refreshed her pages, searching for signs of life, wondering why she had disappeared. The girl who once lit up the world with unrestrained fire had slipped into darkness without leaving a trail. Theories emerged everywhere. Had she stepped away from music? Was she overwhelmed? Was her label holding her back? Was she struggling privately? None of the guesses were confirmed. And the longer she stayed quiet, the more her disappearance became a mystery that echoed across the internet. People weren't angry, they were worried. They cared, they missed her. But Courtney wasn't lost. She wasn't broken. She wasn't gone. She had simply retreated. Not out of weakness, but out of necessity. Courtney's disappearance wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the result of any controversy or chaos. It was something far more human. Fame had exhausted her. The constant pressure to prove herself had worn her thin. The comparisons to legendary artists, the weight of expectations, the scrutiny, it was too much for a young girl who had barely learned how to speak confidently in front of strangers. Performing on stage felt liberating, but the world outside the stage felt overwhelming, noisy, intrusive. Interviews drained her. Social media frightened her. Public attention made her chest tighten, her thoughts scatter. She needed space. Not to run away from music, but to find herself beneath the layers of noise that fame had piled on top of her. In that quiet retreat, something unexpected happened. Courtney began to heal and to rediscover her voice in a way the world had never heard before. While the world wondered if she had abandoned her career, Courtney was writing. Not for headlines, not for charts, not for the industry, for herself. In her most private moments, she explored new sounds, new feelings, new depths of emotion. She wasn't trying to recreate the lightning strike moment that AGT had given her. She was trying to understand who she was beyond it. Her voice matured, her ideas sharpened, her creativity no longer revolved around expectations. It revolved around truth. And slowly, the girl who vanished began reshaping herself into an artist grounded in authenticity, not noise. When she finally stepped back into public view, it wasn't with fireworks. It was gentle, soft, deliberate. But her return was only the beginning of a transformation the world did not expect. Courtney began releasing music again, each piece carrying emotional depth shaped by years of silent reflection. Her performances showed growth, calmer, more controlled, yet still burning with the fire that made her famous. She looked older, wiser, grounded in a way that only comes from surviving something heavy. Fans embraced her comeback, not because it was loud, but because it was real. She didn't chase headlines. She didn't conform to industry noise. She appeared quietly, offering music that felt honest rather than strategic. But even as she returned, one question still echoed among her fans. Why had she disappeared for so long? The truth behind Courtney's disappearance wasn't hidden in drama or uproar. It was rooted in something deeply human: self-preservation. The world had demanded her voice, her presence, her constant performance. But she needed space to breathe. Fame had arrived too quickly, too intensely. Social media felt suffocating. Public scrutiny felt endless. She didn't want to crumble under pressure. She wanted to survive it. So she chose silence. She chose privacy. She chose herself. Her disappearance wasn't an end. It was a beginning, a reset, a chance to rebuild her relationship with music without the expectations that once overwhelmed her. And from that silence, she emerged with clarity that changed everything. Today, Courtney stands taller, quieter, stronger. She no longer lives under the shadow of explosive virality. She creates on her own schedule, releases music when it feels true, and carries herself with a sense of calm that comes only from overcoming invisible battles. Her disappearance wasn't a retreat, it was a return to herself. She isn't the girl desperately trying to meet the world's expectations anymore. She is an artist defining her own. Her story is not one of a star fading away. It is the story of a young woman reclaiming control of her life, choosing peace over pressure, authenticity over noise, silence over chaos. And in that silence, she found something the world had almost taken from her. A voice that belongs entirely to her. Not to fame, not to fans, not to the industry. Her own voice, steady and enduring, ready to rise again on her terms.